Hi and welcome to WoW Flash. This is a series where we look at the news from the World of Warcraft, anything at all to do with World of Warcraft from the past week. So, apologies if I look a bit bedraggled. I'm wrecked this week. Everything's come at once. I've had like 2 months of doing or having to do bugger all. I did plenty, obviously, but then going back to Legion launching at the same time as going back to work. And this week was the first week of actually teaching again. And I ended up today, I had a blinding headache develop around about lunchtime. And then I had my youngest class right at the end of the day. I normally teach sort of 16 plus, but there's some 14-year-old class I've got. And they're nice class, quite keen, but get very excitable. So we were crashing asteroids into our hometown and then simulating this with like ball bearings and sand, and yeah, didn't do my head any good. So anyway, taking some ibuprofen, feeling a bit better now, had a little curry. So on to the news of this week. Well, the biggest news, of course, I'll reiterate, is Chris Metzen leaving Blizzard for whatever reason. He has stated reasons. Maybe that's true. It's plausible. I've already done a video about that, so I'm not going to go too much about that. I was a little concerned to read one of the comments on my video when I did do that was some talk about an illness. Hopefully that's not true. Hopefully that's just sort of tabloid speculation, because that wouldn't be very nice. He's someone who's done a great deal for Blizzard, and therefore by extension a great deal for us who have been playing these games, even if it is just World of Warcraft. In terms of other news this week, the BlizzCon pets have been revealed. In fact, all the sort of stuff you get with the BlizzCon, whether it be the virtual ticket or actually just going there. Where again, I will just tie that into the first thing. I really hope they do put some special events on for Chris Metzen, because he absolutely deserves it. But yeah, the Murloc pet, we get two faction-specific ones. They actually look pretty happy to say that now mortal enemies, don't they? I like Murlocs, love Murloc. I never like it when I have to do a Murloc quest where I have to kill them. Much prefer being a Murloc, but it has to be said they're not the brightest of bunnies. Now, last week in the sort of Q&A, I talked about this a little bit. They sort of mentioned some tuning hotfixes to be done, because they've now got the ability to hotfix, including tooltips, relatively easily. They are a little wary of doing it mid-raid, so that you suddenly find yourself after one pull, all of a sudden things aren't working quite as they were. They've sort of said they're trying to avoid that, but there was supposed to be some hotfixes. They've now sort of gone back and thought about it and thought, well, we'll just do a main tuning pass when raids have been out for. I don't know whether they intend it just to be out for the first week where it's normal in heroics, or whether they intend it for the mythic ones. They've said they specifically want to see how the single target damages against Ursoc, as well as how you deal with ads on various fights as well. But they have identified a couple of things, specifically tank damage, and across the board some people have sort of pointed out certain tank classes, but in fact they've actually said across the board they're going to be dealing with tank damage, reducing it, that is. It's considered a little high. It's a bit unfortunate because I was just starting to level my Death Knight and I'd intended to level it as Frost. And then I thought, well, actually, blood, I often do level it as blood. So, yeah, pick blood. I thought, they're going to nerf it now. Maybe I'll pick the wrong one. I don't know. I suppose at level 102, I can always just pick up the Frost artifacts and go with that if I decide to do that. They've also said they're going to target and, again, nerf the burst AoE of Havoc Demon Hunters and Windwalker Monks. Certainly in dungeons, they're really, really powerful. I mean, I did some stuff with a Windwalker Monk in Mythic Dungeons that were extremely powerful. And I know on my own Demon Hunter, it's effortless. I don't have to play it perfectly at all to completely beast the damage. I only really have to try when I'm trying to compete on boss damage with other people. Because, yeah, the AoE is just effortless, really. But I'm not going to go into the details of that. But they are going to sort of nerf that. They said they'll still be strong. It's not that they're going to nerf it down so it's the same as everyone else's. They still intend it to be a strong feature of those specs, but not to the same extent it is now. Now, speaking of Mythic Plus dungeons, when they open up next week, there's going to be a couple of unexpected things. Well, there's one expected thing and one unexpected thing. The expected feature is, now on the beta, when you did a Mythic Plus, everyone got loot at the end. They did say they were likely to change that and change it. They have. So it's going to, instead of giving everyone a piece of loot, there will be 2 pieces of loot for the group. The other thing, though, which is more surprising, is ordinarily what should be happening is you get gear up to 865 item level if you manage to get up to Mythic level 10. Remember, after that you can do beyond level 10, but you don't get any better loot. It's just there for the achievements and unlocks and things like that. But for the first week, next week, the maximum gear level you can get is 850 item level. And I guess what they want to do is to make sure that raiders are, instead of what some people were going to do, which is maybe do a bit of the raids, but then mainly try and get their gear from doing Mythic Plus. So rather than raiders getting their gear from dungeons instead of raids, they're thinking, well, we'll cap it at 850. So do you know what? The best gear is still going to come from raids. But after that first week, then Mythic Plus is the place to go. Where, of course, Mythic dungeons, Mythic raids, sorry, open up, and then therefore that is the best gear. But of course, yeah, most people are not going to be killing multiple Mythic bosses in the first week. We'll have to see how that goes. The one thing to remember, though, about Mythic Plus dungeons, and could you think to yourself, well, 2 pieces of loot to go around at the end doesn't necessarily sound all that great. And also, this is interesting, they haven't mentioned this, or as far as I know, because the way it works, now, there will be a chest appear in your order hall, presumably next week when the reset starts. It's not there now, but it will be. And the idea is, if you've done some Mythic Plus dungeons, then the following reset, you can loot this chest, and it will give you an item that's roughly in line with the highest level Mythic Plus dungeon that you successfully completed. That means beating the timer, the previous reset. Now, of course, so for the first week, it's capped at 850. So that then brings into mind, well, let's say you achieve Mythic level 10 in that first week. Does that mean that in the second reset, when it reverts back to 865, does that mean the item from the chest could be 865, or is that capped at 850 because when you did it, it was 850? I don't know about that. So it is possible if you do high-level Mythic Plus dungeons that you might be able to get some decent loot right at the start of the following week when that cap is removed. Don't know. Now, they've also announced a number of things for patch 7.1. Again, I mean, they'd already announced some content, the Trial of Valor raid. They've talked a little bit more about that, but I'm not going to go on too much about that. They don't sound, from what I can gather, particularly inspired, but I didn't expect them to be. I mean, I've talked about this before. The Trial of Valor raid is not like a huge piece of content in itself. I think the purpose it's going to serve, certainly the purpose I would perceive it serving, is it's for people who have completed Mythic Emerald Nightmare and are farming that, but Nighthold isn't out yet. But you don't want people who haven't finished Emerald Nightmare, on whatever difficulty it happens to be doing it, being distracted by yet another raid. So it doesn't sound like the fights are hugely challenging. Now, speaking of patch 7.1, yeah, so they've announced a number of changes. It sounds like, obviously they can't really announce tuning features because that is still to come. They still haven't tuned for the current iteration. But they've talked about mechanics changes, and not just to the new class, Demon Hunters. I mean, I did a video about the changes to Retribution Paladins. There's other changes to other classes coming as well in 7.1. It's like, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. We're into uncharted territory. Sometimes when I sort of like predict how things are going to go, I base it on how they've done things in the past. They're changing an awful lot of things. I mean, they're going to significantly change the way a small number of abilities work when this patch comes out. Which they generally don't do. I don't think, yeah. I mean, Vanilla, they did. New game. TBC, they probably did a bit. Well, they did do a bit. But not really since then, as far as I know. Anyway, also speaking of 7.1, they've announced that when Karazhan comes out, remember the new sort of Mythic dungeon, there's going to be attunement for it, as there was in TBC. Now, there was a little brouhaha, I think, with the idea that part of that attunement is going to involve missions. Now, some people, of course, don't like the missions, the Order Hall missions and the followers and all that system. And you sort of have to do it for your order hall campaign. But if you have been playing the game since it came out, you've now completed that. And some people were thinking, well, okay, I don't like missions, I'm just going to leave them now. And it sort of sounds like you'd be better off still, building your champions up, because if it's going to be needed for the Karazhan. Now, Blizzard have responded via a tweet, which seems to downplay that, and they've sort of said the achievement is essentially about dungeons, and it's going to be done through dungeons, without actually saying that there is not going to be a part of it that involves the mission. So I would guess that there will be a component of it that involves the missions, even if it's just one stage and relatively easily done, as long as you've got decent champions, maybe. I don't know what that means. But that the rest of it is done through dungeons. Don't know. It might well be you have to complete all the previous 10 dungeons, the ones that exist now, on Mythic level. Which means, obviously, being attuned for Archway and Court of Stars, and having completed those. I don't know. Beyond that, I don't know. Now, there's also, coming with this patch, going to be another piece of nostalgia cake in the form of Dr. Weevil, who, if memory serves, was involved in the quest line for the first ever legend. I'm sort of thinking now, was he in, I'm pretty sure it was the legendary, the Hand of Sulfuris or whatever it was, the legendary, that sort of dropped off Ragnar. So it was a hammer you crafted. You just got that from Blackrock Depths, like the Ven down there, the Thorium Brotherhood. But you applied a legendary drop from Ragnaros to make it legendary. I'm pretty sure he was involved in that quest line. But equally, he could have been involved in the Anchorage quest line. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was the Ragnaros one. Anyway, he's back. And so is the Isle of Alcaz, which is where King Varian was when he was imprisoned. There was a little bit of a quest line on the Alliance round it in vanilla, but I think the time he was supposedly imprisoned or captured or, whatever, abducted, I suppose, technically was slightly before the time of World of Warcraft. The quest line didn't really go anywhere, really. So that's back as well. So that place is back with Dr. Weevil as a new quest event area, world event area, should we say. Now, whether it's along the lines of the Legion Invasion event, because they did say that they wanted those sorts of things to appear during expansions as well, not just at the end when they're getting ready for a new expansion. Maybe it means that. I'm not sure. It sounds like it involves killing gnomes, so it gets my seal of approval anyway. Caches are now awarding items of loot. Now, I thought that originally they were going to do this anyway. I got this idea. I don't remember whether they were doing this on the beach, and that's where I got it from, or just something I'd read. But I sort of had the impression they were anyway, and they clearly didn't. And now that they are, it's not good. It's really not good at all. I don't know why they're doing this. The thing is, when you open a cache, what you're sort of disappointed with almost anything you get, because what you're really hoping for is a legendary. Even though, of all the content that can award legendaries, the emissary caches have the lowest chance by far to do so. But it's like when you're doing dungeon bosses, which can also drop legendaries, you're not really thinking of legendaries because they can also drop other upgrades for you. So your mind is mostly on that. Whereas with a cache, all you want is a legendary. That being said, when you get something like artifact power, or order resources, or even good old-fashioned gold, well, that's still useful. It's still okay. It's fine. To get a item level 800, 805, 810, whatever, blue crap, is not. It's hugely disappointing. Even vendoring it, or just vending, or just disenchanting it, is still not really returning you anything decent. It's certainly not the same level of, if it was gold it was awarding you. So that's disappointing. I don't really know why they're doing that, because unless it Titan Forges quite significantly, it's of no use to anyone unless they've literally just hit level cap and this is the first emissary crest they've done. And even then it might not be. If it's for, they might already have that, a better item in that slot, even as a brand new level cap. So I don't know why they've done this now. It is very, very disappointing. Useless, in fact, literally useless for any, unless you, as I say, unless you've literally just hit level cap. If you've been level cap for a couple of days, even playing casually, you're going to be miffed at this. I think, really, it wouldn't take very many dungeons to get 800 item level gear in most sockets. And if you've got a bit of gold to splash out, you can get some crafted gear, which is, I think the price of it's been quite stable, but it's quite low, except for plate gear, I suppose. It's a bit higher for that. It's awkward, fell slate's hard to come across. The other thing, again, we'll talk about caches, what you really want is a legendary. The last bit of news is on legendaries themselves. Now, this is a bit of a faux pas, really. There was a lot of sort of talk going around that seems to have now, it has been confirmed, although they've now stopped it, that if you were lucky enough to get a legendary, the system, which I assume is related to what's considered to be the bad luck protection system, the idea that every time you do content that can award a legendary, of course it's a really small chance to do so, but it like chalks one up and it gives you a slightly higher chance next time and keeps increasing so that at some point you get a legendary. Now, people could look at that and say, well, that system isn't working now because I don't have a legendary even after like 2.5 weeks. I don't know when they were thinking of this, first of all, how much of that content they were expecting you to do and, what time on average it should take. Whether they were thinking, because I think what a lot of people are assuming is if they're going to put this system in, they're probably thinking, well, people should, on average, as long as they're doing, let's say, at least a dungeon or two a day, and as long as they're doing their emissary caches, and as long as they're doing the mythic dungeons each week, should probably have a legendary by the time raids open. Well, that's clearly not going to happen now when you look at the number who've got them. But that's an assumption. Blizzard haven't said that. Some people have just assumed that, so I don't know. But what I do know is that there was this rumour going around that when you get your first legendary, there was a really, really good chance to get a second legendary pretty quickly. And this has been confirmed now. It's no longer the case. The fact that they're publicly now confirming it means that they've fixed it. It's not happening anymore. But yes, so it was not apparently unusual for someone who got a legendary to then get a second one pretty quickly. Not everyone did. Not everyone did. It wasn't a guaranteed thing. It just meant you had a much higher chance than you should have done. So instead of the bad luck protection favouring people who hadn't got one yet, it was actually good luck bonus. It was favouring people who'd already got one. Nothing they can do about it now. It's not like they can take those legendaries off people because they might have done that anyway. They might have just naturally, just through sheer good luck, have got a second one anyway. And could you imagine the stink if you suddenly took a legendary off someone, especially if it was a really nice one? I mean, it's one of those things. It's a bug. These things happen. It's been fixed. Whatever. And I'm not a beneficiary, so I'm not saying this from the point of view of being a beneficiary. I'm not at all. I've got no legendaries. But there you go. So that's pretty much the main news for this week. In terms of what's sort of coming out, I'm doing I'm doing a Rets Q&A this weekend. There will be a live one, but that'll be at the end of the month. I want to wait until I've done some raiding at least before I do another live one. Otherwise, what am I talking about? Just really dungeons and stuff like that. But a lot of people have been asking questions, a lot of questions. And every time I keep thinking, right, I'll do the Q&A now, more questions come in. So I'm going to try and cover them all tomorrow or Sunday. Well, cover them all tomorrow. Whether the video comes out tomorrow or Sunday, I don't know. There is also one that's not really related to World of Warcraft I want to bring out, and it's a YouTube-related one, which I don't normally do. Whenever things happen on YouTube, I don't really do my own video on it. But there's a particular issue around like ad-friendly content, and I've been watching obviously bigger YouTubers doing this, and they all seem to be saying the same thing, which is not quite my own perspective on it. So I'm going to do my own one of that. It's not at all related to World of Warcraft, but just for the hell of it. And then there's another couple I've got in mind, but again, I'm not going to say until, because I'm still catching up with all the work I'd lost with my memory stick over summer. So I'm rewriting videos that I'd already written, basically. So hopefully I should have some time to do that, because my characters, although obviously I'm still going to be trying to get them improved, are pretty much raid ready now. Hopefully just, it's a case of getting what artifact power I can and maybe sneaking some extra gear on my Demon Hunter before I give in and just like upgrade a load of the crafted gear to 850. And yeah, other than that, I'm pretty much ready. So, and hopefully you are too, because it's only a few days away now. If you, in fact, your North American servers, it's going to be Tuesday. It's just really only a few days. But there we are. Hopefully I'll get these things, get something out tomorrow, and then Sunday as well. And it's been like a tough old process the last few weeks, as I sort of suspected it would be in terms of getting content out, because I've been spending so much time on the actual characters. This will still happen, of course, and raiding comes out, that will still happen. But I think, you know, at least at weekends, I should get a bit more time to be able to spend on this sort of content as well. And of course, I'll want to do that when I've done some raiding, to offer my thoughts on the raid thing. And at the end of the month, I want to do my review of how I think Legion's gone in the first month as well. I know a lot of people have come out with reviews quite quickly, but for me, no point in me doing a review based on now, because I've only done content that I've done on beta anyway, largely. I want to actually have based it on the content I really want to do, which is raiding. But hopefully you found it useful. If you have, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. And until next time, I'll see you later.